The journey to the intercept point near Neptune took 4 days of travel at maximum sustainable speed. During that time, Commander Daniel Cross conducted continuous combat drills with his task force commanders. Captain Lisa Chen commanded the Phoenix, Captain John Murphy led the Valiant, and Captain Patricia Davis captained the Aurora. All three were experienced officers, but none had faced an enemy like the Krell before. They needed to function as a perfectly unified force, anticipating each other's tactical moves without constant communication that enemies could intercept. Lieutenant Maya Torres spent those 4 days analyzing every piece of available intelligence about Krell military capabilities. The data was frustratingly limited because only 3 species had fought the Krell and survived to share useful information. What she learned was deeply disturbing. Krell ships used adaptive shielding technology that learned from incoming attacks, making the same weapon progressively less effective with each use. Their artificial intelligence-assisted targeting systems could predict enemy movements up to 5 seconds in advance. Historical records showed they had never lost a battle when facing opponents with equal numbers. The Krell fleet arrived at the designated coordinates exactly when predicted by human calculations. 20 vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel in a perfect geometric formation that maximized their overlapping fields of fire. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek and dark like deep-sea predators. Their hulls were covered in reflective armor that made them extremely difficult to target using conventional visual sensors. The Krell commander was called War Master Krellix, and he broadcast a message on all human communication frequencies. Unlike the arrogant Kravatians, there was no contempt or demands for surrender in his measured tone. He simply stated that the Krell had come to assess whether humanity deserved a respected place among spacefaring civilizations or should be eliminated as a potential future threat. The trial by combat would begin in exactly 1 hour. Daniel responded with his own carefully crafted message. He acknowledged the Krell's fearsome military reputation and expressed genuine respect for their historical achievements. However, he made it absolutely clear that humanity would defend itself against any aggression regardless of the odds. Then he proposed an alternative to full fleet battle, a limited engagement between championships with the winner taking everything and the loser retreating from the Sol system permanently. War Master Krellix considered the proposal for several minutes before responding. It was an honorable suggestion, and the Krell valued honor above almost everything else in their warrior culture. He agreed to the proposal but added one important modification. The engagement would involve 4 ships on each side instead of single champions. This would better demonstrate each species' tactical coordination and strategic thinking capabilities under pressure. Daniel accepted the modified terms without hesitation. The Vigilant and its 3 cruiser companions would face 4 Krell warships personally selected by Krellix. The battle would take place in neutral space between the 2 fleets, with the remaining 16 Krell vessels standing down as observers. Both commanders agreed that if either side violated these terms, the full fleet engagement would commence immediately without further warning. As the designated combat vessels moved into their starting positions, Maya noticed something interesting about Krell ship movements. They were not displaying the adaptive unpredictability that she had expected from studying intelligence reports. Instead, their formations followed clear mathematical patterns that were optimized for maximum combat efficiency. The Krell were supremely confident in their refined tactical doctrine and apparently saw no need for deception or creative misdirection. Daniel recognized this behavioral pattern as an exploitable weakness in their thinking. The Krell were undoubtedly brilliant tacticians who had perfected their combat methods over many centuries. However, they had become rigid in their approach and assumed their way was superior to all alternatives. They had not accounted for humanity's most defining characteristic, the ability to think completely outside established parameters and conventional expectations. The battle began when War Master Krellix transmitted the start signal to all 8 ships. Both sides activated their combat systems simultaneously. The 4 Krell vessels immediately executed a perfectly synchronized maneuver, creating a diamond formation with overlapping shield harmonics. It was a textbook opening move executed with flawless precision. Daniel ordered his 4 ships to scatter rapidly in different directions. To outside observers, it appeared chaotic and almost panicked. Maya could see the Krell formation adjusting to exploit what they clearly perceived as disorganization and poor coordination. However, this apparent chaos was exactly what Daniel wanted them to believe. The Phoenix under Captain Lisa Chen drew the attention of two Krell ships with aggressive maneuvering. She led them on a high-speed pursuit away from the main battle space with her engines pushed to absolute maximum output. The Krell followed with complete confidence that they could overtake and destroy her isolated vessel. However, Lisa was deliberately buying precious time for Daniel's actual strategy to unfold. Meanwhile, the Valiant and Aurora executed a precisely coordinated flanking maneuver from opposite vectors. They approached the remaining two Krell ships from angles that forced the enemy to split their defensive attention between multiple threats. Captains John Murphy and Patricia Davis communicated through encrypted quantum burst transmissions, timing their weapons' fire down to the exact millisecond. The Vigilant appeared isolated and vulnerable, which made it the primary target for the Krell tactical computers. Two of the ships that had been pursuing the Phoenix broke off their chase and joined with another vessel to focus overwhelming firepower on Daniel's position. 3 Krell ships against 1 human vessel was exactly what Daniel had intended to provoke. Maya activated the Vigilant's revolutionary quantum disruptor weapon system. The device fired an invisible pulse that temporarily disrupted the Krell ship's adaptive shielding algorithms. For approximately 30 seconds, their protective shields would function at significantly reduced efficiency while the sophisticated systems attempted to recalibrate. It was an extremely narrow tactical window, but it was enough for what Daniel needed. The Vigilant fired all gravitational cannons at maximum power, targeting the closest Krell ship. The devastating beams punched completely through the disrupted shields and caused catastrophic damage to the enemy vessel's propulsion systems. The ship did not explode dramatically, but instead went dead in space, drifting powerless and unable to continue fighting. The 2 remaining Krell vessels adjusted their attack patterns instantly as their artificial intelligence systems calculated new optimal approaches. However, Daniel had already anticipated this reaction. The Vigilant's experimental jump drive activated, and the ship vanished from sensors, reappearing behind the Krell formation before they could properly reorient their weapons. The Valiant and Aurora struck simultaneously from their carefully planned flanking positions. The coordinated 3-dimensional attack overwhelmed the Krell ship's defensive calculations. They were specifically designed to face enemies who attacked sequentially from predictable angles. The complex tactical chess game that Daniel's task force was executing did not fit their programming parameters. 1 Krell vessel took critical structural damage from the Aurora's missile barrage, and its shields collapsed completely under the sustained multi-vector assault. Captain Lisa Chen brought the Phoenix back into the main engagement zone after successfully outmaneuvering her pursuers. The 2 Krell ships that had been chasing her were now badly out of position, too far from the central battle to provide immediate tactical support. Lisa maneuvered the Phoenix into optimal firing position and launched a full spread of torpedoes at the damaged Krell vessel, finishing what the Aurora had started. The battle continued for 20 more intense minutes. The remaining Krell vessels fought with impressive skill and absolute determination, but they were constantly adapting to human tactics instead of overwhelming them with superior force. When the weapons fire finally cleared, 3 more Krell ships were critically damaged. Only 1 remained fully combat capable, and it faced 4 human ships that, while battered and low on ammunition, were still very much in the fight. War Master Krellix transmitted directly to his last functional combat ship, ordering it to stand down immediately. The trial was over and the results were clear. He then opened communication with Daniel and formally congratulated humanity on a brilliantly executed victory. The Krell had observed everything they needed to see. Humanity possessed not merely powerful technology, but the tactical creativity and coordination that marked truly dangerous adversaries. The Krell Dominion would not threaten human space, and instead wished to establish formal diplomatic relations and explore potential military alliance. Lieutenant Maya Torres monitored their ammunition and power reserves carefully from her tactical station. The quantum torpedoes were down to 30% of their full capacity, and the gravitational cannons were due for mandatory cooldown in 12 minutes. She reported these figures to Commander Daniel Cross, who nodded grimly while watching the Cravatian fleet struggle through the asteroid field. They had achieved far more than anyone back on Earth had expected, but the battle was far from over. Admiral Zekthor finally realized that his fleet was being deliberately baited into a trap. The human captain was using the natural environment against them and turning the Crovatian fleet's superior size into a deadly liability. He ordered another retreat and this time commanded his ships to scatter in all directions across the solar system. If they could not defeat the human ship in direct combat, at least they could escape to fight another day with better preparation. Daniel had anticipated this possibility during his tactical planning sessions. As the Crovatian fleet began to scatter like frightened fish, he broadcast a message across all communication channels. The message was simple and repeated continuously in multiple languages, including Crovatian. Any ship that attempted to leave the Sol system would be hunted down and destroyed without mercy. Any ship that surrendered immediately would be spared, and their crews treated according to galactic warfare conventions. The alien commanders had exactly 5 minutes to make their decision. The offer seemed audacious coming from a single ship that was facing 200 enemy vessels. However, the Crovatians had witnessed the Harbinger destroy over 100 of their comrades with apparent ease. They had seen their mighty fleet reduced to chaos by one human captain, who fought like no enemy they had ever encountered. The fear was spreading through the alien crews, and many captains began to question whether escape was even possible. 37 Crovatian captains chose surrender within the 5-minute deadline. Their ships powered down all weapons and shields while transmitting the standard galactic surrender codes on all frequencies. It was utterly humiliating for warriors of the proud Crovatian Empire to surrender to a single enemy vessel. However, they preferred the shame of surrender to the certainty of death. At the hands of this terrifying human, Ship Admiral Zekthor watched in pure rage as more than a quarter of his remaining fleet surrendered to the humans. His pride, his military reputation, and his entire career were crumbling around him. He screamed orders at his bridge crew to prepare the Eternal Dominion for one final attack. If he was going to die today, he would die as a warrior fighting to his last breath rather than surrendering in shame. The massive Crovatian flagship charged its main cannon, a weapon so powerful it could crack a moon in half with a single shot. Admiral Zekthor personally aimed the weapon at the Harbinger and fired. The beam crossed the distance between the two ships in milliseconds, moving too fast for conventional evasion maneuvers. For a brief moment, the alien commander thought he had finally destroyed the human ship that had caused so much destruction. However, Commander Daniel Cross was not using conventional tactics. At the exact instant before the devastating beam would have struck, the Harbinger executed an emergency micro-jump. The ship vanished from its position and reappeared 200 kilometers away. The Crovatian beam continued past where the Harbinger had been and struck one of the surrendered alien vessels instead. The ship exploded instantly, killing everyone aboard in a flash of light. Daniel's voice came over the Crovatian fleet communication channels, cold and precise as ice. He stated clearly that the admiral had just killed his own people with that shot. The next captain who fired on the Harbinger or on any surrendered vessel would meet the same fate as the 100 ships already destroyed. This was their final warning, and there would be no more chances given. Admiral Zekthor sat heavily in his command chair, completely defeated. Around him, the remaining Crovatian ships were standing down and transmitting surrender codes. The battle was over and humanity had won against impossible odds. The mighty Crovatian Empire that had conquered 47 worlds had been stopped by a single human vessel and a crew of 150 people. The next 72 hours transformed the Sol system into the most diplomatically active zone in human-controlled space. News of the Crovatian defeat spread across dozens of star systems at faster-than-light speeds. Species that had been conquered or threatened by the Crovatian Empire suddenly saw new possibilities. Ambassadors and diplomatic representatives from 15 different alien civilizations arrived in Earth orbit requesting meetings with human leadership. The Harbinger and its crew returned to Earth where they received a hero's welcome unlike anything in human history. Commander Daniel Cross became the most famous human being alive overnight. The ship that had single-handedly defeated an armada became a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender even when facing extinction. However, Daniel remained cautious during the award ceremonies and media interviews because he understood that this victory had also painted a target on humanity's collective. Back Admiral Helen Price conducted extensive debriefings with Daniel and his senior staff over several days. Lieutenant Maya Torres presented detailed technical analysis of the Harbinger's performance during combat. The gravitational beam cannons had exceeded all expectations and projections, but they had also revealed critical vulnerabilities in the design. After the battle, 2 of the 4 main cannons needed complete replacement due to structural stress damage. The quantum torpedo system had performed flawlessly, but production limitations meant Earth could only manufacture about 30 torpedoes per month with current facilities. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan submitted a comprehensive technical report on the experimental reactor that powered the ship. During peak combat operations, the reactor had operated at energy levels that should have been theoretically impossible, according to conventional physics. She recommended significant modifications and safety upgrades before the Harbinger saw combat again. With proper improvements and additional resources, Lisa believed they could build 5 more ships of similar capability within 2 years. The surrendered Kravatian vessels presented both a tremendous opportunity and a significant challenge for Earth. Humanity lacked the proper facilities to imprison thousands of alien combatants for extended periods. Admiral Price negotiated directly with the Kravatian government to arrange repatriation of the crews in exchange for formal peace treaties and non-aggression pacts. The negotiations were tense because the Kravatian Empire also demanded the return of their captured ships. Daniel participated in the diplomatic negotiations as a military advisor to the human delegation. He argued strongly that Earth should retain at least 10 of the captured vessels for detailed study and reverse engineering purposes. Human scientists and engineers could learn decades' worth of advanced technology by carefully examining Kravatian systems. The diplomatic team agreed with his assessment, and the final compromise was reached. Earth would keep 10 ships along with their complete technical databases, while the remaining vessels and all crew members would be returned to the Kravatian Empire. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walker led a team of scientists and engineers in examining the captured alien technology. What they discovered was simultaneously impressive and disappointing. Kravatian ships were certainly larger and more durable than current human vessels. However, their actual technology was less advanced than expected in several key areas. The Kravatians had relied primarily on overwhelming numbers and raw power instead of innovation. Their military had not faced a serious challenge in decades, which had made them dangerously complacent and resistant to change. Meanwhile, Maya Torres received an unexpected visit from an alien ambassador. The representative came from an organization called the Viridian Collective, which was a coalition of species that had successfully resisted Kravatian expansion through cooperation. The ambassador was a crystalline being named Sela, who communicated through light patterns. Sela revealed that the Viridians had been quietly observing humanity for several years, waiting to determine if humans were potential allies or potential threats to galactic stability. Sela explained to Maya that the galaxy was divided among several major powers, and the Kravatian Empire was merely one of the more aggressive factions. There were species out in the unexplored regions with technology that made both human and Kravatian capabilities look primitive by comparison. The Viridian Collective had survived for centuries by forming strategic alliances and sharing defensive technology among member civilizations. Now they wanted to extend that same offer of alliance to humanity. Maya brought this critical information directly to Admiral Helen Price, who immediately convened an emergency meeting with Earth's government leaders. The revelation that the Kravatian Empire was not even the most powerful threat in the galaxy forced a complete reassessment of human military strategy and diplomatic priorities. Earth desperately needed allies and advanced technology if humanity wanted to survive in this dangerous galactic environment. Admiral Zekthor faced his own terrible reckoning back on the Kravatian homeworld. He was transported back in disgrace to stand trial before the Imperial Council. The loss of nearly 150 warships to a single enemy vessel was unprecedented in the entire history of the Kravatian military. Some council members demanded his immediate execution for incompetence and failure. Others argued he was simply the unfortunate first commander to encounter humanity's true military capabilities. The Kravatian Empress herself reviewed the complete battle recordings in her private chambers. She watched the Harbinger's incredible tactical brilliance, its impossible speed and maneuverability, and its devastating weapons that tore ships apart. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something completely unfamiliar, genuine fear of another species. She decided to spare Zekthor's life, but stripped him of all rank and military command. More importantly, She ordered a complete restructuring of Kravatian military doctrine to account for enemies who fought with unconventional tactics. Back on Earth, Commander Daniel Cross struggled with the overwhelming burden of sudden fame. He received offers for promotions to admiral rank, speaking engagements at universities, lucrative book deals, and even political positions in the government. He politely declined every single offer. Instead, he requested assignment to oversee the construction and testing of the next generation of Harbinger-class vessels. His entire crew agreed to join him in this new and vital mission. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan began designing improved reactor systems that incorporated all the lessons learned from the intense combat against the Kravatian fleet. She worked 18-hour days because she understood that humanity's long-term survival might depend entirely on her calculations and designs. Her engineering team made a breakthrough discovery. By combining human reactor technology with carefully adapted Kravatian power distribution systems, they could create ships even more capable than the original Harbinger. The United Earth government announced the formation of humanity's first true interstellar military fleet called the Guardian Initiative. Rather than building massive capital ships like other alien species preferred, Earth would focus resources on smaller and more agile vessels equipped with cutting-edge technology. The strategy was designed to leverage humanity's key advantages: innovation, adaptability, unconventional thinking, and the willingness to take calculated risks. 6 months after the historic battle, construction began on 5 new Harbinger-class vessels in orbital shipyards around Earth and Mars. Each ship incorporated specific improvements based on combat data and engineering analysis. The second ship, named the Vigilant, featured Maya's recommendations for enhanced targeting systems and sensor arrays. The third ship, called the Resolute, incorporated Lisa's revolutionary upgraded reactor design. The remaining 3 vessels combined various other technological advances discovered through studying captured Kravatian technology. Daniel received troubling news that changed everything just as construction was progressing smoothly. Long-range sensor stations detected another alien fleet approaching human space from a different direction. This new threat belonged to a species called the Krell Dominion, and intelligence reports suggested they made the Kravatians look peaceful by comparison. The Krell had heard about humanity's victory over the Kravatian Armada, and they wanted to personally test Earth's defenses. They were sending 20 ships, but each vessel was reportedly more advanced than entire Kravatian battle groups. Admiral Price summoned Daniel to her office for a private meeting and presented him with a difficult choice. He could continue overseeing ship construction, which was a vital mission but relatively safe. Alternatively, he could take command of the partially completed Vigilant and lead a small task force to intercept the approaching Krell fleet. The Vigilant was not fully ready for combat, and its systems remained untested in real battle conditions. However, it represented humanity's best available option for defending Earth. Daniel did not hesitate for even a moment. He accepted command of the Vigilant immediately. Maya Torres and Ben Walker both volunteered to join him, along with most of the original Harbinger crew. Lisa Morgan promised to have the Vigilant's critical systems fully operational within 2 weeks. Though she warned that launching months ahead of schedule meant accepting significant risks, the United Earth government made a carefully worded public announcement about the approaching Krell fleet. This time they tried to avoid the widespread panic that had accompanied the Kravatian crisis. The message emphasized humanity's improved military preparedness and recent combat successes. The underlying message was clear: Earth would not be intimidated by any alien threat. As Daniel prepared for this dangerous new mission, he took time to reflect on how dramatically everything had changed in just 6 months. Humanity had transformed from an isolated species barely noticed by galactic civilization into a recognized military power that other species took seriously. The Harbinger's incredible victory had not just saved Earth from conquest, but had announced humanity's arrival on the interstellar stage. However, Daniel understood perfectly that the greatest challenges still lay ahead in the darkness of space. The Krell were reportedly smarter, more experienced in warfare, and far more dangerous than the Kravatians had ever been. This next battle would not be about surprising an overconfident enemy with unexpected capabilities. Instead, it would be a true test of human ability against a prepared and deadly adversary who knew exactly what to expect. The Vigilant launched from Earth's orbital shipyards 3 days ahead. of even Lisa Morgan's optimistic projections. The ship was noticeably sleeker than the original Harbinger, and incorporated numerous design improvements that made it faster and more maneuverable in combat. Its primary weapon systems included upgraded gravitational cannons and a completely new experimental weapon called a quantum disruptor that could temporarily disable enemy ships without destroying them. Daniel assumed his position in the captain's chair with Maya Torres at the tactical station and Ben Walker at operations. The crew numbered only 120 officers, but every single person had been hand-selected for their specific skills and combat experience. They represented the absolute best that humanity had to offer. Joining the Vigilant were 3 other vessels for this critical mission: the light cruisers, Phoenix, Valiant, and Aurora. Each ship carried conventional weapons that had been significantly upgraded with technology, learned from studying captured Kravatian systems. The 4-ship task force represented Earth's complete available military strength. Because the other Guardian Initiative vessels would not be combat-ready for several more months, Admiral Price delivered final orders via secure, quantum-encrypted transmission. The task force was ordered to intercept the Krell fleet at the outer edge of the Sol system near Neptune's orbit. Under absolutely no circumstances should the Krell ships be allowed any closer to Earth. If the battle went poorly, the task force was authorized to retreat to the distant colony worlds and prepare for extended guerrilla warfare. The year was 2247, and space had never been so dangerous for humanity. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the screen showing 300 vessels under his command. His scales were black like midnight, and his eyes gleamed with confidence as he studied the star system ahead. This was the human home system, and it would fall just like the 47 other worlds his empire had conquered. The Kravatian Empire was the most feared military force in this sector of the galaxy, and Zekthor had never lost a battle in his 30 years of service. His tactical officer approached with new data about the humans. They were a young species who had only learned to travel faster than light 30 years ago. Their military was small and their technology was primitive compared to Kravatian weapons. The intel report showed Earth had maybe 40 ships scattered across their system, and most of them were built for patrol work instead of real combat. Zekthor smiled at this information because it meant the battle would be over quickly and with minimal losses to his fleet. Far across the system near Jupiter's orbit, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair aboard a small research vessel called the Defiant. His crew of 12 people were running standard surveys of the gas giant's moons when the sensors began showing impossible readings. Lieutenant Amy Carter was his second in command, and she had been a top student at Earth's Naval Academy. She checked the sensor data 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. 300 massive warships were entering the outer edge of their solar system, and all of them were heading toward Earth. Jake felt his stomach drop when Amy confirmed the readings were accurate. No fleet that size had ever been detected in human space before, and the energy signatures coming from those ships indicated weapons far beyond anything Earth possessed. He immediately sent an emergency message to Earth Command, but he knew it would take hours for the signal to reach home. The alien fleet would arrive at Earth in 3 days, and humanity had no time to prepare a proper defense. The Kravatians intercepted the human transmission within minutes, and Admiral Zekthor decided to respond with a message of his own. He broadcast across all human communication frequencies, and his message was simple and brutal. Humanity had 72 hours to surrender unconditionally or face total destruction. To prove his seriousness, he included footage from other worlds his empire had conquered. Cities burning, populations being herded into transport ships, and planetary defense forces being wiped out in minutes. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. On Earth, panic spread through the population as the government made the alien ultimatum public. The United Earth government held an emergency session with military leaders from every nation. Admiral Helen Price commanded Earth's defense forces, and she stood before the council with a grim expression. She explained that Earth could not win a conventional battle against the Kravatian fleet. The technology gap was too wide, and the numbers were overwhelmingly against humanity. Their 40 ships would be destroyed in the first few minutes of combat. However, Admiral Price had a secret that gave her hope. For 15 years, a hidden project had been underway in the shipyards near Saturn's moon Titan. The project was so classified that most of Earth's government didn't know it existed. The result of this project was a single ship called the Harbinger, and it represented humanity's greatest achievement in military engineering. Unlike conventional warships, the Harbinger was built with one specific purpose: to face impossible odds and survive. The ship's captain was Commander Daniel Cross, a man who had more combat experience than any other officer in the human fleet. He was 42 years old and had fought in the border conflicts against pirates from the Andromeda sector. His tactical officer was Lieutenant Maya Torres, a former physicist who helped design the revolutionary weapon systems installed on the Harbinger. Together they had trained for scenarios just like this one, though neither of them ever truly believed they would face 300 enemy ships at once. As the 72-hour deadline approached, Admiral Price made a decision that shocked the military command. She would send only the Harbinger to meet the Cravatian Armada, instead of committing the entire Earth fleet to a battle they couldn't win. Some officers called this plan insane and demanded she reconsider. They argued that sending one ship against 300 was not just foolish, but suicidal. Admiral Price listened to their concerns, but she stood firm in her decision. She explained her reasoning to the council in private. If the Harbinger failed, Earth's remaining 40 ships would evacuate as many civilians as possible to the colony worlds and other star systems. But if the Harbinger succeeded, if it could buy even a few more days, then maybe humanity could find another way to survive. She knew something the Cravatians didn't understand about humans. Humanity's greatest strength was not superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It was the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to refuse surrender even when facing certain death. The Harbinger launched from the hidden shipyards of Titan under complete radio silence. The ship was 800 meters long, which seemed tiny compared to the Cravatian capital ships that stretched over 3 kilometers. To any observer watching the sensor readings, the single human vessel approaching the massive alien fleet appeared hopelessly outmatched. The size difference alone should have made the outcome obvious. Commander Daniel Cross addressed his crew of 150 officers and enlisted personnel over the ship's communication system. He was honest about their situation because they deserved the truth. This mission was a calculated gamble, and the odds of survival were not good. Many of them would probably die in the next few hours, but if they could buy Earth just a few more days, if they could make the aliens think twice about attacking, then millions of civilians might have time to escape to safety. Lieutenant Maya Torres ran her final diagnostic checks on the weapon systems. The Harbinger carried technology that violated several interstellar treaties, systems so dangerous that their very existence had been kept secret from most of Earth's government. She looked at Daniel and they shared a moment of understanding. Today they would either save humanity or be remembered as the crew who doomed Earth by revealing its best weapons too early. The ship's first officer was Lieutenant Commander Ben Walker, a man who had served with Daniel for 8 years. He coordinated with the engineering section where Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan reported that all systems were functioning at peak efficiency. Lisa had spent 5 years of her life working on the experimental reactor that powered the Harbinger. She had run thousands of simulations, but today she would finally see if her calculations could save humanity. As the Harbinger approached the Cravatian fleet's position near Mars orbit, Admiral Zekthor received the sensor report about the incoming vessel. His tactical officer, Subcommander Vextel, barely suppressed his amusement when he reported the readings. A single human ship, small by Cravatian standards, was approaching their fleet of 300 warships. The alien commander ordered his fleet to hold their current position because he wanted to observe this curiosity. Perhaps the humans wanted to negotiate, or perhaps they were foolish enough to believe one ship could make a difference. Either way, Zekthor was content to let them approach because it would make an entertaining story for the victory celebration. The Harbinger took up a position exactly 1 million kilometers from the Cravatian fleet and held steady at that distance. At this range, the human ship was still outside the effective weapons range for conventional arms, but close enough for communication signals to travel quickly. Commander Daniel Cross opened a communication channel to the alien fleet, and his message was brief but delivered in perfect Cravatian language, which surprised Admiral Zekthor and his bridge crew. Daniel stated clearly that the Cravatian fleet had violated Earth space without permission and must withdraw immediately. He gave them exactly 1 hour to begin their retreat from the solar system. The message was delivered with absolute confidence, without any trace of fear or uncertainty in his voice. It was the tone of someone who held all the advantages, not someone facing 300-to-1 odds against an overwhelming enemy force. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Zekthor felt his amusement turn to irritation at the human captain's words. The arrogance of this tiny ship demanding that his entire Armada retreat was both offensive and insulting to his empire. He responded with his own message stating that the humans had 10 minutes to surrender or be destroyed. There would be no negotiation and no mercy for those who defied the Cravatian Empire. Lieutenant Maya Torres monitored the alien fleet's formations carefully from her tactical station. She noted that they were maintaining standard battle configuration, which suggested they did not perceive the Harbinger as a legitimate threat. Their shields were at normal operating levels instead of combat intensity. Their weapons were charged but not locked onto any target. The Cravatians were completely unprepared for what was about to happen, and Maya allowed herself a small smile. Daniel counted down the minutes in silence while his crew remained focused on their stations. Each officer knew their exact role in the plan they had practiced 1,000 times in simulation. However, no simulation could truly capture the weight of this moment, with the fate of 8 billion people resting on their performance. When the 10-minute deadline expired without any sign of surrender from the Harbinger, Admiral Zekthor ordered 5 of his cruisers to destroy the impudent human vessel. It was massive overkill for such a small target, but he wanted to make a statement about what happened to those who defied his empire. The 5 Cravatian ships broke formation and accelerated toward the Harbinger, with their weapons systems charging to full power. Daniel waited calmly until they reached the optimal range, and then gave the order that Maya had been waiting for. He said only 2 words: engage Protocol Omega. The Harbinger's experimental systems activated in an instant, and the ship vanished from all sensors for exactly 3 seconds as its stealth field generator created a localized distortion in space and time. When the Harbinger reappeared, it was no longer 1 million kilometers away from the alien fleet. Instead, it had materialized inside the Cravatian formation, positioned perfectly between the 5 advancing cruisers. Before the aliens could react or adjust their targeting systems, the Harbinger fired its main weapons. But these were not conventional energy beams or kinetic projectiles that the Cravatians expected. The ship's main cannons discharged focused gravitational beams, a technology that humanity had reverse-engineered from ancient derelict vessels found in the outer colonies years ago. The gravitational beams did not simply damage the Cravatian ships or punch holes through their armor. Instead, the beams tore the alien vessels apart at the molecular level, ripping their structure into pieces so small they appeared as expanding debris clouds. All 5 cruisers were reduced to wreckage in under 10 seconds, and the Cravatian fleet erupted into chaos as commanders shouted for status reports and tactical analysis. Admiral Zekthor stood from his command chair and demanded to know how a single human ship had destroyed 5 cruisers so quickly. His tactical officers scrambled to analyze the sensor data, but their displays showed readings that should not be possible. The human vessel was moving at speeds that defied their understanding of physics, and its power signature was far beyond what their intelligence reports had suggested. Something was very wrong with their assessment of human capabilities. Daniel did not give the Cravatians any time to adapt or formulate a proper response. The Harbinger executed a series of micro-jumps, appearing and disappearing throughout the alien formation like a ghost. Each time the ship materialized, more enemy vessels died under the devastating gravitational beams. Maya coordinated the targeting solutions with precision that came from years of theoretical physics training, finally being applied in real combat situations. Within 15 minutes of the first shot, the Harbinger had destroyed 40 Cravatian vessels. The alien fleet attempted to regroup and form defensive positions, but their formations were in complete disarray. They had never faced an opponent who could move through space like this, appearing and vanishing at will, striking with such precision and power. Admiral Zekthor realized with growing horror that his fleet was not just being attacked but systematically dismantled by a single adversary. He made a decision that he never thought he would make in his entire military career. Admiral Zekthor ordered a full retreat from the human solar system. Pride and reputation meant nothing if his entire fleet was destroyed in this humiliating defeat. His ships needed to escape, regroup at a safe distance, and return with a completely different strategy to deal with this unexpected threat. However, Commander Daniel Cross had no intention of allowing the Kravatian fleet to escape and regroup for another attack. The Harbinger moved to block the most efficient escape routes while continuing to destroy any ship that attempted to jump to faster than light speed. Maya had calculated that any vessel trying to activate their jump drives would need several seconds to charge the systems, and in those crucial seconds, they would be completely vulnerable to attack. The Harbinger exploited this weakness ruthlessly, and more Kravatian ships exploded as they tried to flee. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walker monitored the enemy communications from his station and reported that the Kravatians were panicking. Their command structure was breaking down as captains argued with each other about tactics. Some wanted to stand and fight while others demanded immediate retreat. The lack of unity and coordination was exactly what humanity needed to maintain the advantage. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan reported increasing stress on the Harbinger's systems from engineering. The gravitational beam cannons were operating at 115% of their designed capacity. The quantum torpedo reserves were depleting rapidly. The experimental jump drive that allowed the ship to teleport around the battlefield needed a cooldown period soon, or risk catastrophic failure. They were pushing every system to its absolute limit and beyond. Daniel made a tactical decision to transition from direct assault to guerrilla warfare tactics. The Harbinger began using hit-and-run strikes, appearing at the edges of the alien fleet to destroy isolated vessels before vanishing again. It was less spectacular than the initial attack, but it was sustainable for longer periods. Admiral Zekthor saw the human ship retreat slightly and felt a brief moment of hope. Perhaps they had exhausted their weapons or pushed their systems too far. He immediately ordered his remaining ships to reform and pursue the Harbinger. If they could corner the human vessel and bring overwhelming firepower to bear, they might still win this battle through sheer numbers. However, pursuing the Harbinger proved to be a fatal mistake. Daniel led the Kravatian fleet into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where the massive space rocks provided natural cover. The Harbinger wove between asteroids with incredible agility, using the terrain to mask its movements. Every few minutes it emerged from behind a massive rock, destroyed one or two Kravatian ships, and vanished again before return fire could be coordinated. The alien vessels were larger and less maneuverable, which meant several of them collided with asteroids while trying to pursue. Others were forced to slow down to navigate safely, making them easy targets. What had begun as a pursuit became a massacre.